Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our conversation series hosted by the Association of Graduates and the Air Force Academy Foundation. My name is Vince Greco. I'm the Air Force Academy Foundation's Senior Development Director for the Northeast region. I'm also the father of a 2017 graduate and a women's soccer alum. From physical education courses to physical fitness testing, as well as competitive sports, the athletics department at the Air Force Academy is essential to developing our cadets into leaders of character by teaching them initiative, teamwork, and the will to win. Cadets are required to take physical fitness tests each semester to measure overall strength and conditioning. Proficiency is required in both the physical fitness test and the aerobic fitness test. Also, cadets are required to take a total of 10 physical education courses, and they must participate in competitive sports by playing on an intercollegiate or intramural team. The Academy is home to 27 different men and women's Division I NCAA teams and 10 different intramural programs. Today, we have the incredible opportunity to talk to members of the athletic department. Mr. Nate Pine, Director of Athletics, Miss Jen Block, class of 1992, and Cadet Squadron 20, Executive Director of Athletics, and one heck of a volleyball player at USAFA. Colonel Maya Anderson, class of 1997, permanent professor, Cadet Squadron 35. She's the head of the physical education and professor of department in physical education. And she is a Hall of Fame swimmer here at the Academy. We also have Coach Ryan Cole, who is our cross-country coach for both the men and women's team. Thank you guys for joining us today. I must say, it is great to see you. Even though this is a virtual call, I can see your smiling faces without masks. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, Vince, thanks for the opportunity. It's a thrill to get a chance to engage a little bit. And we've learned a lot about Zoom calls and how we can interact with folks over the last year and a half. So very familiar with it, but thanks for the opportunity. Good to be with you.
All right, well, let's jump right into it with questions that were submitted by members of today's audience. And members of the audience, we can't thank you enough for being here today, for submitting questions and learning more about the athletic department. Nate, it would appear that both Texas and Oklahoma are going to leave the Big 12 Conference in 2025 to join the SEC. Now, a few years ago, the Air Force Academy was thinking about jumping into the Big 12. Presentations were made. That did not come to fruition. As the athletic director, will you now give this a little bit of consideration over the next couple of years if asked for the Academy to join the Big 12? Our wrestling team is already a part of that conference. Do you foresee this a possibility?
Well, I think there's unlimited possibilities right now in college athletics. So yesterday, University of Texas, University of Oklahoma gave notice to the Big 12 that they would not participate in future media rights. So right now, the Big 12 rights run through the end of 24. So 25 and beyond is in question. I think the real interesting thing is going to be how quickly that moves. So they're not going to participate in television rights beyond 24, but that doesn't mean there won't be a shift and maybe even a departure from the Big 12 in advance of that 24. So that'll be the real piece that we're monitoring. We had a conference call yesterday with presidents and athletic directors in the Mountain West. And I think probably every conference, Power 5 or Group of 5 conference in the country are having discussions this week, because it could be a real sea change, if you will, in college athletics and at least conference realignment. So we're always going to be monitoring that. We're going to be monitoring it as a member of the Mountain West and how to strengthen our conference, make sure that we're prepared to add if needed, if that's going to strengthen our position and build our television profile. Or if we need to backfill in the Mountain West, we want to be prepared to pivot and adjust there. And then to your point, looking at other opportunities, and that's a big piece of what I'm tasked to do, making sure we know what's on the horizon, what interest there might be in Air Force, and then making the best decision for our academy. So whether that's Big 12, whether that's Mountain West in a very changed look, we don't know exactly what the college landscape is going to be. What I will tell you is strengthening our athletic department here at the Air Force Academy over the last 3 years puts us in a good position. You hinted before, Air Force did participate in that Big 12 potential expansion last time. We had made it through the first round of cuts into the second round of cuts. So the Academy is a attractive property no matter what as you look at conference realignment. But whether it's the Big 12 or something else, we're going to be tuned into it. We're a great brand. We're a great institution. Academically, we fit into any profile. So I think there's a lot of good things going for us, and we're going to figure out what the best opportunity for us moving forward long term is going to be.
Well, I think you hit on the head as well, that we have a lot to offer any conference or around the country, and we do bring a great package. Could you talk a little bit about the Learfield Cup and how great that has been for this institution this past year?
Sure. This last year, we finished 65th in the Learfield Directors Cup. And so the Learfield Directors Cup encompasses all 300 plus Division I programs across the country. And what it is it's a formula based on how many teams make postseason play and then how far they go in postseason play. So Coach Cole's athletes helped contribute mightily to that 65 national ranking for us last year, but it was the second highest we've ever had at the Air Force Academy. So that is going in the right direction, doing the right things. And what it does is that really gives us a strong athletic profile as conferences evaluate, what that membership's going to be. But that's one piece of it. When you look at it, you want to have strong athletic programs. That's absolutely part of what a conference realignment would take into consideration. But they also take into consideration national following and brand reputation. They also take into account academic profile, especially as you look across the country at certain leagues. That's really important. Then the other piece is the TV piece. So being close to the Denver market and a large media market makes our profile attractive. So all of those things in aggregate go into a very inexact science in how you approach conference realignment.
We're going to talk about Coach Cole's accomplishments in his cross-country team in a moment. The one thing I think is great that we're talking about is sports picking back up here again in the fall. As you know, Jen and Nate, we did have sports at the Air Force Academy during COVID. And when I'm not doing my job for the foundation, I help out with Falcon Vision and some of the things in the athletic department. And I hope in our lifetimes, we never, ever see an empty Clune Arena again or the ice arena. It was eerie to watch our basketball teams and our hockey team and soccer teams play in front of zero fans. So with that in mind, how has COVID and the cancellation of some of those revenue producing events impacted the department's financial situation?
Sure. Certainly talk to that, but I would comment a little bit on your first part of the question. There was a very disconnected season for our athletes and for our coaches without that fan environment. And so that was a challenge for all of us. Certainly was exactly what it needed to be, fighting through a global pandemic, but feel very good about where we're coming out on the other side of it. So I echo your comments. We never want to have another season like that. But I think a testament to the Academy, our physical mission had to persevere no matter what. And so we were going to compete in some form or fashion. We were going to have PE classes, and we were going to figure out a way as safely as possible to move forward with our physical mission. And we did that. So I'm very proud of our athletes, our coaches, our staff, certainly our medical staff for all that they did to step up and make that possible, because it was a challenge, and we're better for it. And as you talk about the financial piece of it, we forecasted very early on that we were not going to have revenues in the way that we normally did in athletics as we came out of that first spring. And so we were diligent in working very closely with our CFO on the government side and on the AFAC side to dial back our expenses to make sure that we were going to be in a strong financial position. So we worked through that very diligently, both in forecasting what our revenues, and those were readjusted probably 6 different times. So a lot of spreadsheet action last year and making sure that we were dialed in on our finances. But then we also got some help when you looked at it across the NCAA. Recruiting was a dead period. So there was no recruiting travel. There was no official visits or unofficial visits where we're hosting folks. So that helped with the expense side of the ledger. We also didn't have events, either internal or external. And so that helped with the expense side of the ledger. And then you also didn't have professional travel or conferences or some of the normal things that we would have on the expense side that can hit pretty hard. So all of those things in aggregate, along with team travel, helped us to dial back that expense side so that we could be in level set with our revenue reduction. So we actually came through COVID in a pretty strong financial position because we were aggressive early and we were smart about our approach. But I think that will probably be a competitive advantage for us here this next year because we are in such a strong financial position. So we are going to be able to return to some normalcy this academic year and what we plan in and what we're budgeting, maybe differently than some of our competition. So I take that as a real strength, even though it was a difficult time, certainly not exactly what we wanted to be doing. I think we did do it the right way, and that'll yield some dividends down the road.
That is all great news. Jen, we are a government installation, and therefore we have some different rules that apply to athletics as opposed to some other institutions around the country. Do you envision the new college sports landscape with now that athletes getting paid? Can that be helpful or harmful for Air Force athletics?
Well, Vince, as you know, as from your daughter, all of our cadets are paid already. And so I think it's incumbent upon our coaches and our administrators and anybody who's out recruiting that we pay all of our student athletes and cadets here at the Air Force Academy. And I think we just need to really double down and be really clear about what the value proposition is when you come to the Air Force Academy and everything that we have to offer and what you get as a student athlete here at the Air Force Academy. And definitely, I know the parents are excited to hear that when they graduate, they have a job that they go to. And so I think, and our coaches do a phenomenal job of that. We are really synced up with Army and Navy. And so we're all playing under the same set of rules. And, those are probably our biggest, competitors in the recruiting world. And I think as this becomes more prevalent, I think we'll be able to test the case with certain student athletes. And under certain situations, we'll have to work it through the chain of command and JA, that Judge Advocate. But I think there will be opportunities for our cadet athletes to actually take advantage of NIL. So it's so new, a lot of unknowns, but we are closely monitoring that with our other two service academies.
And that's a great answer. I think a lot of us sometimes forget that our student athletes are paid up there as they play. That I didn't think about it like that. So that is a great answer. So Colonel Anderson and Jen, you were both student athletes here. What is it like to be a student athlete? There are a lot of time constraints and commitments that you all must go through to succeed on the field, court, and in the classroom. What's it like to be a student athlete?
Well, I think it's great. And that's and our coaches do a great job of finding driven, motivated student athletes that really want to push themselves both academically, militarily, and physically. It takes a special individual to come here, and our coaches do a great job of scouring the country to find those D1 athletes that could actually participate and be successful here. It was an honor, and it was the highlight of my day to come down to volleyball practice. And so I do think that piece is, we find kids that are passionate about their sport, and then we give an opportunity to play at the next level and continue that passion, and then learn the military piece and have an opportunity to serve your country. And I'll hand it over to you, Maya.
I think, being a cadet athlete now is, there's a lot more demands on our cadet athletes, I think, than when we were athletes, over 25 years ago. But it's still a lot of hard work, and it requires a lot of dedication and balance of time, just because of all the demands we place on our cadet athletes. And they're dedicated and work hard to do that. And our coaching staff works closely with them to do that. I had an opportunity to be on the coaching staff when I was a captain and major from 2009 to 2005. And we worked closely with them to develop the cadet athletes to do their best, both on the field and in the classroom and up in their squadrons. But it's an honor and privilege. It's, you look back on it, being a cadet athlete at the Air Force Academy, and you learn a lot of great lessons about yourself, about life, about teamwork, about leadership. So there's a tremendous opportunity, and we're so excited to offer those opportunities to our cadet athletes, and excited to see what they do in competition.
I think that might be the piece that I add into that, Vince, is just the leadership development that happens in our courses and also in our athletic teams, our varsity teams, is something that's very tough to replicate. And so the proof is in the pudding. The young men and women that graduate and commission that were ICs, I think, have a real competitive advantage even against their peers here at the academy because of the time management pieces, because of the teamwork, because of the communication skills, and just the demands and the pressure that put on them. We talk about that very openly in the recruiting trail. And then once they're here, that it is hard, and there are not enough hours in the day to do everything that you want perfectly. But those are also leadership lessons learned, and the product that we graduate at the end of each spring goes on to do great things in our Air Force and now in our Space Force. And we're very proud of that because that's what athletics is all about at the Air Force Academy.
I couldn't agree more. And I travel all over the Northeast, and I have yet to meet a graduate who was either an IC athlete or not, who has not used the pillars, the leadership foundation that they learned on the field or the classroom in their everyday life and the successes that they've had. So you're all doing just a great job of that. All right. So now many of us have seen the video of the Australian swim coach, Dean Boxall's celebration of his swimmer winning the gold medal at the Tokyo Olympics. Coach Cole, did you have the same type of reaction when Mihaela Norris sprinted from third to first place in the last 100 meters to become the national champion in the 3,000 meter steeplechase? Come on, we know you did.
Well, Nate was sitting pretty close to me, so he may have better recollection of that than I do. But yeah, there were a lot of different emotions, particularly as Mihaela just executed a great race and put herself in a phenomenal position to win. And then her last barrier was probably her worst barrier, and she stuttered a little bit going in and created a little bit of space between her and the other two women she was competing against. But yeah, that last 100 meters, just, I guess the main emotion, just overwhelming excitement. And I had other coaches, we would, the rest of the meet, walking down the street, fans coming up to her, talking to recruits, getting texts from alums, just saying that that last 100 meters was the most exciting part of the national championships. And so that was really just a special moment. But I was excited for Mihaela, and it really kind of perfectly capped off her collegiate career and just a phenomenal year that she had, maybe an unprecedented year. But it was also exciting for our program. Mihaela had a teammate, Maria Metler, a few days before, finished third in the 10K. Their point totals combined to place our women 16th at the national championships. That's a historical best for Division I track and field for our women's program. So that was exciting. As an institution, again, it is hard. It's a hard place to do everything that is put upon the cadets, and yet they find a way to succeed. So the example that Mihaela set, Maria set, it shows that you can come here, you can compete at the highest level, you can succeed, but you can also win. And that's something that we want to continue to strive for. So I think from an institutional and an athletic department standpoint, that was very positive. Even the branch of service, the Washington Post had an article about new Space Force officers, a surprise national champion, and General Raymond was tweeting about Mihaela. So even getting some good publicity for the Space Force was very neat. And who knows, maybe if she's supported through our WCAP program a year from now, she may be back on that exact same track, because the 2022 Track and Field World Championships are going to be there, and she may be representing the United States, or we may be cheering for her 3 years down the road in the Olympics. So it was exciting on a lot of fronts, and definitely just a phenomenal moment I won't forget.
Truly a remarkable performance. And this is pretty much stating the obvious, but with that national attention, you missed probably some recruiting time because of COVID. This can only help, having the national attention. And as you said, getting that Air Force name, and you can win here out. Does that help you tremendously in the recruiting effort?
I believe it will, but it's still about finding the right people. And so it's finding the right people that fit with our mission, not just athletically, but they see the athletic experience being a very important platform for them to develop into, the student athlete they want to be, but also the cadet they want to be, the future officer that our country expects them to be. And honestly, I'm a civilian, but most importantly, I hope it's the person that they want to be. So it's going to help us on the recruiting front, definitely, but we still need to find the right people to support our mission and ultimately help us accomplish what we're here for.
So that's just fantastic. All right, Colonel Anderson, as I travel around the country, we talk a lot about the cadet wing, physical education, the PT test. When I tell them that the cadet wing, the entire cadet wing, is involved in boxing, they don't believe me. So how do you discuss the importance of the required PE courses, boxing, water survival, and combatives? For those listening That's a very important part of the curriculum here at the Academy, correct?
Yes, thanks, Vince. Yeah, our PE classes, our core PE classes, there's 6 of them, are foundational and critical to the course of instruction here at the Air Force Academy and their 4-year experience. Freshman year, all cadets are taking boxing and physical development. Sophomore year, they take 2 aquatics classes, swimming and water survival. And then their junior year, they take 2 combatives classes, which are closely aligned to what the Air Force accession sources and pre-deployment training are doing. And these courses not only give them valuable military and physical skills that they'll use for the rest of their time here in their careers, but we're also teaching a lot of important life skills. In each one of those classes, they are faced with difficult challenges and adversity, and usually under a set rules of engagement, so they can't go too far out of that. And then we're also, through those experiences and their experiences, experiential learning experiences, they're seeing how they are functioning under pressure and adversity, and how they can best execute and do their best. And this develops grit and resiliency and courage. And this is closely aligned to the institutional outcome of warrior ethos, which is so important to the Air Force Academy. We also are teaching things like visualization, positive self-talk, and confident body posture in classes such as boxing, which they can use in the classroom and later on when they're in pilot training, for example. We also teach breathing techniques in our combatives courses, which is also another life skill they can use throughout. Like I mentioned, the combatives courses are closely aligned with the Air Force curriculum. We do have more contact time, but the directorate here of athletics does house the Air Force Combatives Program Center of Excellence, and we actually develop the curriculum and train the trainers that go out and train the rest of the Air Force in combatives, which is a relatively new program for the Air Force. And that will help in the Space Force as well. We're really excited about some new PE courses that we're offering this year. We've got a elective course in marksmanship as well as self-protection, which a lot of the cadets are excited about.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, you can confirm, and you just did, but I have a lot of people shaking their heads that are thinking that water survival is not a real thing anymore. It is a real thing, correct?
Yes, all cadets take water survival, and they do go through a series of challenging events to pass that course, including jumping from the tower, swimming underneath the bulkhead, as well as mannequin rescue, treading water, drown-proofing, and a survival swim. So we, in one way or another, even if you're a really great swimmer aquatically, you'll be challenged in that course. And then we also work with the cadets who come to us that are not great swimmers to make sure that they've got a good foundation and feel confident going into operational career fields like being a pilot.
Great. Coach Cole, jumping back to you for a moment, and I keep referencing the Olympics, but we are seeing more and more young people win gold medals. A 17-year-old swimmer from Alaska has won a gold medal. You're seeing 13 and 14-year-olds. There's a lot of young talent out there, and you have done a heck of a job bringing a lot of this young talent to the Academy and our cross-country and track and field programs. Can you kind of give us a sneak peek of what's in store? How do you think the team's going to compete in this upcoming fall and winter and spring seasons?
Yeah, thank you, Vince. One, I think the biggest thing, we were very grateful to have a season, even if it was much different than what we've experienced in the past. But we are keeping our fingers crossed and hoping for a little bit more normalcy moving into this upcoming year, and hopefully we'll be able to have that. Specifically for the upcoming cross-country season, our objectives are always to be a premier program. And so there are 31 teams that qualify for the national championships in cross-country out of the roughly 320 Division I sponsored programs. We expect to be in that top 31. And usually if you're one of the top 30 teams in the country, you can go to the Mountain West Conference Championship and you can be in contention to win that as well. So those are always two of our big objectives, and that won't change moving into this upcoming year. A little bigger picture, we want to raise the profile of our program. Hopefully we've been doing that a bit, but we want to keep that going. The men have been top 23 the last 4 years at the national championships. That matches our best stretch in program history, but we'd like to see that move forward. The guys would also like to have a program best finish at the national meet, so that's finishing top 8. So we have a little bit of an opportunity to make some history there if things go well this upcoming fall. The women have been receiving votes in the national poll the last 5 years in a row. Prior to that, we had not received a single vote in the national poll. And so we have some challenges. We just graduated the 2 young women that I mentioned before, and they're now officers out in the Space Force and Air Force. So those are some, they're not very tall, but there's big shoes to fill. So, we're going to try to do that as best we can, but we would like to see that streak continue as well as our women become a more nationally prominent program. And then ultimately, we want to be one of the programs that sets the standard for the athletic department. And so that's something that we look at, our character development, our leadership opportunities, really going out and, the mission of the athletic department is to develop officers or leaders of character through athletics. And we expand upon that, and we expect to develop leaders of character through athletic success. And we feel like that last part is a key piece. So we want to show that it can be done the right way. We want to have it be kept in the right perspective of why we do athletics and why we do athletics at the Air Force Academy, but we expect to succeed. And we're not doing our job well if we don't. And so that's a big part of what we're trying to do, not just this upcoming fall, but every single year for our programs.
For those of you in the audience or around the country, if you ever get a chance to attend one of these cross-country meets, I encourage you to do so. These young men and women, they are sensational and they can flat out move. Sometimes I'm out on the golf course or around base here and I'm watching them train and it looks like an all-out sprint. So well done. Keep up the great work. All right, the next question from our audience is, what is the likelihood of women's lacrosse becoming an intercollegiate sport in the next few years here at the Air Force Academy?
I think I'll take that one, Vince. And I'll tell our audience, if you're coming to a cross-country meet, lace up your shoes because you've got to run to a few different positions in order to fully appreciate and see that race. So you got to be in good shape just to watch the cross-country meet. But as we talk, shift gears to your question on women's lacrosse, we're always open to conversations when you talk about elevating a club sport to a varsity sport. Just to give you some context, a couple of things you take into consideration. What is the competition regionally or conference-wide that would give you an opportunity for a varsity team? I think that's always a first one. I think the other one you look at is, what does that do to your Title IX mix? And so when you're talking about a sport like women's lacrosse, obviously that's not going to hurt you in Title IX balance in the way that maybe the men's sport was. So those are early considerations. And then the other piece of it becomes funding for the program. So as you mentioned before, we've got 27 varsity teams that compete in the NCAA. We also have a cheer and mascot program, and we've got a men's and women's boxing program who also compete under the umbrella of the athletic department. So we've got a lot of teams, and I'm not jumping up and down trying to add more. But that said, when it makes sense, we're open to the conversation. So any addition of a team, be it women's lacrosse or others, would have to come along with some donor support and funding to endow those programs so that as we add to the athletic department, we don't water down some of the progress that we're trying to make in other sports, like we were talking about with cross country and track and some of our other teams. So we do look at it. It would have to be budget neutral in order for that to become a reality. But we have had some conversations. I haven't personally had any with women's lacrosse group, but we are getting down the road a little bit with the rugby group and perhaps bringing the men's and women's rugby programs under the athletic department umbrella. But that's going to take a significant financial commitment. And we've got a motivated group that are out fundraising, trying to do it. But that's how we would approach any club sport that was looking to maybe migrate in under the athletic department and into the varsity realm. So it's not impossible, but it's certainly not imminent. As you talked, I think the way you phrased it, in the next couple of years, I would say very unlikely. But that said, I wanted to expand a little bit on the question just so the audience understands how we approach that when asked or when it comes up in a question type of a setting.
Well, I think you bring up a very good point, too, about fundraising for athletic programs, fundraising for the academy. It's vital to what we're trying to do on the athletic fields and on the court. As you mentioned, rugby has a strong group. Boxing has a very strong group. If any of you want to talk to us offline about any of that, we would be happy to answer those questions and welcome your support. All right, Colonel Anderson, with the new standards for the Air Force fitness test, do you think the standards will change for the physical fitness test for the cadet?
Thanks, Vince. We are definitely monitoring and watching closely what is coming out with Air Force policy with regard to changes to the Air Force test. And there's still some things online, and we are in conversation with Air Force and as well as ROTC and some of the other commissioning sources. The way the Air Force fitness test wraps into the cadet experience is the Air Force fitness test is the commissioning fitness test. So all seniors are required to take and pass the Air Force fitness test, whatever that is, their senior year, last semester of senior year. So we will follow the Air Force fitness test standards for that senior class. And again, like I mentioned, we're still working with the Air Force as well as the other commissioning sources to see how exactly that will be rolled out. But we'll follow that commissioning source standard. But in short, I don't believe that we will be changing, don't plan on changing our Air Force Air Force Academy fitness standards or our curriculum and our program. And that includes the physical fitness test, the aerobic fitness test, physical education classes, and participation in competitive athletics by all of our cadets. We will maintain that. That goes into the physical education average, which is part of the overall performance average, which is a graduation requirement. So I don't anticipate that or changes to the commissioning fitness assessment. We will ensure that our seniors are ready and prepared for that to pass that commissioning fitness assessment and then go on to a lifelong of fitness and be able to lead their units out in the Air Force and Space Force.
So Colonel Anderson, if I can maybe add to that a little bit, I think the reason we have the higher academy standards is to make sure that our graduating seniors are in the best possible position to easily excel through the Air Force commissioning standards. So we hold a higher standard throughout the early underclassmen years to make sure that we're set up for success and batting 1,000 when we get to the Air Force commissioning standards. And that's why we're really engaged in keeping those higher standards for our cadets, because we're setting them up for success. We're already starting for an advantage in the commissioning when they move on out into the Air Force and Space Force. So that's important to us, and it's something we pride ourselves on. And I think it's something our cadets pride themselves on when they graduate, that they are in peak physical shape and ready to go out and be successful in our forces. Absolutely.
No doubt. If you were able to walk around campus and see them doing some of these physical fitness tests, or even our basic cadets that are here now going through that, it is very strenuous. One of the questions I'm often asked when I'm on the road is the class, if you graduated in 72, well, then 73 had it easier than 72, or 74 had it easier than 73. Can you confirm that the physical fitness test is just as tough today as it was generations ago?
Yes, we've had our fitness test in place since the 1960s and 70s, and then the events themselves, the PFT events, have not changed. It's the pull-ups, a long jump, push-ups, sit-ups, and the 600-meter run. And then our 1.5 AFT has not changed as well. And really, we have made minor adjustments to the scales and a little bit of technique to align with the Air Force push-ups and sit-ups, for example. But the test is the same, and it is very challenging for our cadets. And we like to have that challenge there for them to continue to help them to have something to strive for and to go for. And many of our cadets excel and work hard to do well in that test. And we still have the 500 club and the 1,000 club, as many graduates may remember. So,
and Vince, what I'll add is what has changed is the number of cadets that actually make the 500 or 1,000 club since back compared to the 60s and the 70s. And that these young men and women are in great shape, and they come in great shape, and we take them to the next level. And they really pride themselves on making the 500 club or the 1,000 club.
Well, thank you for that. And you've made my job that much easier. I tell them it's if in some instances, it may be harder than it was back in those previous generations. So I'm going to deviate from a question here that's from our audience, but I want to talk a little bit about the future. we're just a month or so away from football being played at Falcon Stadium and volleyball being played in the Cadet Gymnasium. As it stands right now, are we going to have fans in there? Will the community be allowed to come in and support their Falcon teams?
Sure, I'll take that one. We came out actually in late spring and publicly announced our intention to be at full capacity in Falcon Stadium and all of our fall sports. And I fully expect that's going to continue over into our indoor in the winter sports. So the short answer is yes, Vince, we expect to be at capacity. Right now, the state of Colorado is doing well, even though we are seeing things nationally with some of these COVID variants. So we're going to monitor it closely. We're going to be in constant communication with the CDC and our local authorities here in public health to make sure that we're still in a great spot. But our intent is to have fans at Falcon Stadium and enjoy and get back to some of that home field advantage and competitive atmosphere that we missed so much last year. So feel very good about where we're headed right now, but those things can change. And if there is a change, we'll certainly communicate them instantly to our fan base. But I don't expect that we're headed in that direction right now with what we're seeing locally here in El Paso County and in Colorado Springs.
That is great news. As I travel around the country, airports are becoming more and more crowded. It's hard to find a destination to go to right now. I think fans and people want to get back out. So I encourage everyone in this audience, in the community, to come out and support Falcon football and cross country and gymnastics when it starts up, because these cadets really need your support. And Nate, this year's football schedule is a little bit different. The Navy game has been moved. It's going to be played on 9/11 in Annapolis, Maryland. And then our Army game will be played in November in Texas. So this is a loaded question. We want our fans from around the country, obviously, to come out and support these two teams. But does that give us an advantage? Because you know darn good and well we're going to win that Commander-in-Chief's trophy this year, right?
Well, we wanted it bad last year, Vince, and it came down to that fourth quarter. So unfortunately, it slipped through our fingers out at West Point, but we go into every season as the Commander-in-Chief's trophy is our number one goal in the sport of football. And beating our academy foes in head-to-head competition or other sports, number one on the goal list every time we walk into a new academic year. So yes, that's what we're shooting for. Yes, that's what we expect. And we very much want the Commander-in-Chief's trophy to reside in Colorado Springs where it belongs. We're stuck on 20, which fortunately is the most in the competition of the three academies, but we need to get ourselves to 21 and get it back here in the spring. So yeah, that's the intent. That's what we want. We will catch Navy a little earlier than we normally do. That game moved up, obviously, to the solemn anniversary of the September 11th attacks. In doing so, we did it at the request of our partners at CBS. We work with them in the Mountain West. Navy also works with them through their TV rights deal with the American Athletic Conference. And they were gracious enough to put us on national television. So we'll have an over-the-air broadcast so that it can be a celebration of our armed forces even on that solemn anniversary. And so that's the intent. That's why we're doing it. So we'll play a little bit early for the at Navy game. And then you mentioned the Army game. We are playing that at a neutral site this year for our home game. And next year for Army's home game, we signed a 2-year deal with the folks at Globe Life Field, brand new stadium for the Texas Rangers. So it'll be an incredible experience for our cadet athletes playing in the game in that kind of a venue. It'll certainly be an experience for our fans that travel to the Metroplex. We have a great AOG active group there that'll be heavily involved with things all around the game. And I also think the central location and making it easy for folks to travel from all over the country, maybe to a little bit of a heightened game, is a good thing. So we're going to be on the national stage over the air CBS broadcast for both of those games. So raising the profile of the Air Force Service Academy games to be on par with what the Army Navy game is in December on the national broadcast, that was important. So we need to sometimes do things a little bit differently in order to achieve the goals that we're setting out. And that's to raise the profile of the game. So I hope folks are as excited about it as we are. I certainly think that the team is going to be ready. Exactly what we have, we'll have to wait and see. COVID was a weird year. We only played 6 games. So I think it'll be an important fall camp that we will kick off here the first week of August. And we'll learn a lot about our team and some of the replacements to graduating seniors, but I feel pretty good about the talent on our roster. So tell you loud and clear, the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy is goal number one, and I feel pretty good about our opportunities in the sport of football.
And I can't wait to have football back and all sports back. And before we go, I really want to take this opportunity to let those members in the audience know, and the people that I meet with on the road, what a remarkable job, Nate, that you and your staff and AFAC have done through this time of COVID, getting our men and women back on the field or back on the court or the pool or in their physical fitness tests and their classes. Really a job well done. And to get us to this point where we're just weeks away from kickoff, thanks to all of you in that room and your entire staff. Really, thank you so much.
Well, Vince, you hit the nail on the head. It's a total team effort, and not only the athletic department staff, because there's a heavy lift internally just to make sure that we were in a position to compete. But we had a lot of help from folks around campus at the Air Base Wing, at the Med Group. Folks were all in to help us execute our testing, our protocols, and then to compete. So total team effort across USAFA, and we couldn't have done it without our teammates. So we're all pleased to have that hopefully in our rearview mirror and be charging forward to a little more normal academic and athletic year starting here shortly.
Well, thanks again, Mr. Pine, Ms. Block, Colonel Maya Anderson, and Coach Ryan Cole for taking the time to visit with us today, to be here and to meet. If you are planning on attending any athletic events this upcoming year, please come out and support your Air Force Academy. Thanks for being with us, everybody. That's our time for now. Have a great afternoon.